For as long as the shmup genre has been around, there hasn't been much ingenuity in most modern incarnations. The games are generally separated into horizontal versus vertical scrolling and normal pace versus bullet hell style of enemy aggression. However, in 2012, Digital Reality and Grasshopper Studios released Sine Mora onto Steam in various console digital markets. Sine Mora is an interesting contender in the shmup genre because its game mechanics are focused around the concept of time, something that is usually a non-issue in the shmup genre. This really puts Sine Mora up as a fascinating subject to look at in terms of gameplay, based on how the game's mechanics come together to affect the player. Sine Mora's difficulty and game features all revolve around time. When the player starts the game, their countdown timer is displayed prominently at the top center of the screen. This is effectively their battle royale caller. Once that timer hits 0, it's game over and the players must restart at the beginning of the chapter. Two things bring this timer down: natural progression and getting hit. Conversely, killing enemies also restores a certain amount of time to the player. Other time restoration methods are two rare pickups, one that restores a varied chunk of time and another that gives 10 extra seconds of time once the timer reaches 0. Checkpoints, denoted as time stabilizing, each mark segments where your current allowance is discarded and a new time limit is established, forcing players to constantly be on their toes. In terms of actual player agency, ships determine the bullet spread of the shot and pilots determine what kind of bomb the player has access to. Pickups work somewhat like Gradius, where players kill enemies to pick up the much coveted attack booster in order to make clearing enemies much easier. A unique mechanic to Sine Mora, however, is the time capsule, a sort of focus mode which grants the player one of three choices: the ability to slow down time for easy bullet evasion, rewinding time to undo a dumb mistake, or the ability to reflect any shot in an area near the ship. With these mechanics, players must survive to the end without exploding to bits. With all the strange changes Sine Mora brings to the genre, the gameplay is much like a traditional shmup, yet still feels like a new experience. The time capsule is probably the most interesting mechanic of the bunch. Most shmups in the bullet hell genre offer a function that slows you down in order to evade bullets with minimal effort in order to maximize damage. In Sine Mora, your focus varies in 3 different ways, which lends itself to 3 totally different playstyles. Slow acts as a pseudo-focus mode since it slows the bullets rather than the player, offering a familiar experience but with a slight change to mix things up. It's the kind of perk players pick if they seek a familiar experience from past games. Rewind is basically a save state button, which is interesting in Sine Mora since that effectively acts as a way to heal time. This feels more geared towards players unfamiliar to the shmup genre, so it's nice to see that concession available. Reflect acts as a sort of parry mechanic, which is something rare in the shmup genre but is still ultimately a panic button. The reflect radius is fairly generous and even damages enemies with a return shot, but bad habits can form from dependence on this perk. The overall time mechanic is an interesting thing to note as well. In a shmup, players are typically railroaded at a set pace with no way to influence how fast the game plays and no reason to care anyways. With Sine Mora's time mechanic, context is brought to the player's actions through gameplay logic since they need to kill in order to stay in the game rather than killing becoming an unconscious action within the gameplay. One last little nugget of time shenanigans is that while players have a nifty array of mechanics available, the bonus multiplier for score and pickups is based on how long players go without using either a bomb or the time capsule, which acts as a huge measurement of a player's skill overall. All the changes Sine Mora brings, oddly enough, does a lot of neat changes to do pretty much nothing on how shmup plays, but rather how it feels to play. The big kicker with Sine Mora's mechanics, however, is how it influences player logic. The act of time being a sort of health meter does weird things to a player's frame of mind. Traditionally, a player will die in one hit in a shmup unless shown otherwise, so the knowledge of being able to take a hit on the chin is present in the player's mind. With time being health, however, players are effectively hemorrhaging health as they play, and the time allotted is usually not enough to beat a stage. The player is always under pressure to perform, which oftentimes can lead to mistakes. Getting hit also causes the player to drop all their power-ups as well, which would prompt a hasty dash to collect all the power-ups back. Being short on time also provokes a more aggressive playstyle as the player desperately tries to find that extra kill for those 2 more seconds needed to get to a checkpoint. The time capsule being finite also causes bad habits based on player logic. Players might use it all in a straight segment, or they may perpetually store meter just in case. Bosses compound all these mental processes as well, when a single mistake among the swath of bullet patterns can snowball into many more mistakes, resulting in a game over. It's really interesting to see how something as simple as a countdown timer can do so much to a player's frame of mind, and how well Sine Mora built the game's mechanics around this ideal. Sine Mora's focus on time-placed gameplay really helped it stand out as a fresh and unique shmup in the industry. The mechanics play with the core ideals just enough to keep the game fresh and always keep a challenge going for experienced players. One thing's for certain, however, if you put the time into Sine Mora, then you're set to have a fun time.